The luxury car dealership gleamed under the bright sun, its polished windows reflecting the perfect shine of sleek, expensive vehicles lined up like trophies. Inside, the air was filled with the soft hum of well-dressed customers, admiring the shiny exteriors and sitting in plush leather seats. The space exuded wealth. Chrome details, exotic perfumes, and the subtle scent of new leather mingled in the air, creating an atmosphere where only the elite seemed to belong. It was a place where dreams were sold, dreams of wealth, status, and the ultimate symbol of success. A luxury car. Michael walked into the dealership on a warm, sunny afternoon, his shoes worn, and his clothes modest. He didn't look like the usual clientele. His jeans were a bit faded, his shirt not designer, but there was something about him that set him apart. He carried himself with a quiet dignity, a calmness that suggested he wasn't there to impress anyone. He was just a man who had worked hard all his life, yearning for something more, something he'd always dreamed of. As soon as he stepped through the door, the employees noticed. Claire, the head salesperson, glanced up from her desk, her eyes scanning Michael's modest outfit. She exchanged a look with another colleague, silently exchanging a judgmental glance. It was clear, Michael didn't belong in a place like this. To them, he was just another broke guy, someone who wandered in to dream but could never afford to leave with what he desired. Michael approached one of the luxury cars, his heart racing as he gently ran his hand along the sleek, polished surface. He had dreamed of this moment for years, standing in a place where he could touch the cars he'd only ever seen in magazines or on the big screen. It was a simple dream, but for someone like him, it felt like the impossible. His breath caught in his throat when Claire, the head salesperson, approached him with her practiced smile. She was well-groomed, the kind of woman who seemed at home in the world of wealth and opulence. But when she looked at Michael, her smile barely flickered. She gave him the once-over, her gaze lingering on his modest attire before settling back to a professional, albeit cold demeanor. "Can I help you?" she asked, her tone polite but distant. Michael took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. "I was hoping to test drive one of these cars," he said, his voice steady despite the nervous knot in his stomach. "I've been saving for a long time, and I think I'm finally ready to make a purchase." Claire's eyes narrowed just a fraction, her judgment clear in the brief pause before she responded. "I see," she said, her words clipped. "You know, these cars aren't exactly for everyone. Are you sure you can afford a car like this? It's a big investment." Michael flinched at her words, though he tried to mask it with a smile. "I've been saving for years," he explained quietly. "I've worked hard for it." Claire didn't even pretend to hide the skepticism that danced in her eyes. "Well, I'm afraid we can't just hand over the keys to anyone who walks in here. We cater to a very specific clientele, and it's not really a space for people who aren't, well, established." Her words were sharp, cutting deep. There was no attempt to hide the implication that Michael didn't belong in a place like this. She practically spat the word established, as if it were a badge of honor. As if he wasn't worthy of even dreaming about something so luxurious. Michael's face flushed with embarrassment, the sting of her words sinking into his chest. He could feel every pair of eyes in the dealership on him, judging, assessing, silently mocking him. He wasn't one of them. He wasn't good enough. "I understand," he murmured, struggling to hold back the humiliation that threatened to consume him. "I'm sorry for wasting your time." He turned slowly, his back straight, even as his heart sagged. With every step toward the door, the weight of rejection seemed heavier, the air colder. His dreams felt miles away, unattainable, like they had never really belonged to him in the first place. As he stepped outside into the sunlight, he forced himself to look up, keeping his chin high, though the sting of her words lingered. "One day," he whispered to himself, "I'll come back, and I'll prove them wrong." But for now, Michael walked away, head down, his heart full of quiet resolve, his dreams shattered but not destroyed. The following day, the dealership was bustling with its usual flow of wealthy customers. The air was still thick with the scent of fresh leather and expensive cologne, and the staff moved around, welcoming new arrivals with practiced smiles. But suddenly, the door swung open with a soft chime, and the atmosphere shifted. A figure entered the showroom that immediately caught everyone's attention. It was Johnny Depp. There was no mistaking him. His distinctive style, his dark sunglasses, and that unmistakable aura of a man who had lived through the highs and lows of fame. The staff froze for a moment before springing into action, rushing to greet him with the excitement that only a celebrity could command. But Johnny, calm and collected, simply waved them off. He walked straight past the gleaming cars, heading toward Claire, who had been busy with another client. Her smile faltered for a brief second when she saw him. She had known Johnny for years, but this was different. The usual charming grin he wore had been replaced by something far more serious, almost somber. "Claire," he said, his voice smooth but with an edge that Claire hadn't heard before. "We need to talk." Claire was taken aback. "Of course, Mr. Depp. What can I do for you today?" Johnny glanced around briefly before leaning in, his tone lowering, as if ensuring no one overheard. "It's about Michael." Claire blinked, confused. "Michael?" "Yeah," Johnny replied, his expression hardening slightly. "You know, the guy who was here yesterday, the one you turned away." The realization hit Claire like a ton of bricks. Michael, the man she had so coldly dismissed the day before, was connected to Johnny Depp? She felt a rush of shame and confusion swirl in her chest. "He's a friend of mine," Johnny continued, his gaze unwavering. "A long-lost friend. He's been through a tough time lately, financially and personally, but I've been helping him, quietly, behind the scenes. I've been supporting him financially to get back on his feet." Claire's stomach churned. The man she had looked down on, the one she had assumed was just another broke dreamer, had been under Johnny Depp's personal care? She felt her face flush with guilt. The judgment she had passed on Michael, the coldness with which she had turned him away, it was all starting to feel like a cruel mistake. "Michael came to me because he was ready to change his life," Johnny said, his voice now tinged with disappointment. "And he trusted your dealership. He thought he could find a place where he might be welcomed, even if he was still rebuilding. But instead, he was dismissed. And not just dismissed, judged." Claire's mouth went dry as Johnny's words sank in. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. The shock of the revelation hit her hard, and for the first time, she could see the depth of her own mistake. Johnny leaned in just a little closer, his voice soft but firm. "You don't know who people are just by looking at them. Don't ever forget that." As he turned to leave, Claire stood rooted to the spot, the weight of her actions pressing down on her. The light-hearted chatter of the dealership now felt distant, almost hollow. She felt the sudden need to apologize to Michael, but she didn't know how to make it right. For the first time since she had started working here, Claire felt like she was the one who didn't belong. Johnny Depp's calm demeanor remained, but there was a subtle intensity in his eyes as he turned to face Claire. His gaze was steady, unflinching, and there was no mistaking the weight of the moment. Claire felt a knot form in her stomach, and for the first time since she'd started working here, she wasn't sure what to say. "Why did you treat Michael like that?" Johnny's voice was quiet but carried an edge of disappointment. He didn't raise it in anger, but the power of his words was undeniable. "Why did you turn him away like he was nothing?" Claire swallowed hard, fumbling for the right words, but they eluded her. She had no defense. She had been so quick to judge, so certain of Michael's worth or lack thereof, based on his clothes, his appearance. Now faced with the reality of who he was and who had been backing him, Claire felt herself shrinking. I didn't mean to," she began, her voice shaking as she tried to form an apology. "It wasn't like that. I thought he was just a dreamer, someone who wouldn't be able to afford the cars." Johnny raised an eyebrow, his gaze piercing. "So you judged him based on his appearance? Based on what he looked like?" His voice was still controlled, but there was a firmness in it that made Claire take a step back. "Appearances can be deceiving, Claire," Johnny said softly, but with the weight of experience behind him. "I've been through my own share of ups and downs. I've seen what it's like to be written off by people who think they know you. And I've learned that real wealth isn't about money. It's about character, integrity, and heart." Claire opened her mouth to protest, but the words caught in her throat. She couldn't argue with him. She had seen enough of the world to know that her assumption had been shallow, that she had fallen into the same trap that so many others did, believing that the outward appearance of wealth was all that mattered. Johnny's eyes never wavered as he spoke, his voice steady but carrying an undeniable weight. Michael didn't deserve what you gave him. He didn't deserve to be treated like he was less than anyone else. No one does. You don't know people's stories just by looking at them. The air seemed to thicken between them, the tension rising as Claire struggled to meet his gaze. She felt the sting of shame sear through her chest, each word Johnny spoke adding more weight to the guilt she could no longer ignore. "I'm sorry," Claire finally stammered, the apology sounding hollow, forced, and unsure. But she couldn't take back what she had done. The damage had been done, and she knew it. Johnny didn't react with anger. He didn't yell or reprimand her. He simply stared at her, his disappointment clear in his eyes. "Sorry doesn't undo a first impression, Claire. You might not get a second chance with Michael." His words hit hard, and Claire was left standing there, feeling small and exposed. There was no anger in Johnny's voice, only sadness, a quiet sadness that hung in the air like an unspoken truth. As Johnny turned to leave, the dealership seemed emptier. Claire stood frozen in place, her face flushed with regret, realizing that the lesson had been learned in the harshest way possible. A few weeks passed, and the luxury car dealership returned to its usual rhythm, the polished cars gleaming in the sunlight and the well-dressed clientele chatting in hushed tones. But a subtle shift hung in the air, something unspoken, as if the staff was waiting for something. Or someone. The doors to the dealership swung open once more, but this time, it was different. A familiar figure stepped through, but Michael was no longer the quiet man in faded jeans, the one who had walked out with his head down after being rejected. No, he was different now. Michael walked into the showroom with a newfound confidence, his posture straight and purposeful. His clothes were tailored now, stylish yet modest. There was a quiet strength in his demeanor, an air of success that couldn't be ignored. His presence alone commanded attention, and as he made his way past the luxury cars, the staff couldn't help but stare in shock. It wasn't just his appearance, it was the energy that radiated from him. He wasn't the broke guy they had dismissed weeks ago. He was someone entirely different, someone who had earned his place. Claire was the first to spot him. Her heart dropped into her stomach, a mix of guilt and embarrassment flooding through her. She had never expected to see Michael again, let alone in this new light. She could barely hide the huss on her face, her cheeks flushed with the realization of how wrong she had been. The rest of the staff exchanged nervous glances as Michael walked toward them, his eyes meeting Claire's. There was no anger, no malice in his gaze, just a quiet self-assurance that spoke volumes. He stopped in front of her, his expression calm but knowing. "Hello, Claire," he said simply. Claire's throat tightened, and for a moment she couldn't find the words. She had been so sure, so dismissive of him before. But now, Michael stood before her. No longer just a dreamer, but a man who had proven his worth, not just to the world, but to himself. I owe you an apology," Claire said, her voice soft but sincere. The words felt heavy, as if they had been trapped inside her since the moment Johnny had revealed the truth. "I shouldn't have judged you. I was wrong, and I'm truly sorry." Michael smiled, but it wasn't one of arrogance or superiority. It was a smile of understanding, a recognition of the journey he had been through, of the rejection that had fueled his rise. "Apology accepted," he said, his voice calm. "But I'm not here for that. I'm here for something else." As he walked toward the car he had once only dreamed of driving, the staff watched in silence, a sense of awe lingering in the air. Michael wasn't just buying a car, he was reclaiming something far more important. He wasn't just purchasing a symbol of success, he was claiming respect, dignity, and self-worth. Claire stepped forward, holding the keys to the car. She handed them to him with a new respect in her eyes. "Congratulations, Michael. You earned it." The words, simple as they were, carried weight. Michael took the keys with a nod, his smile now one of quiet triumph. He had worked hard for this moment, and he wasn't just driving away with a luxury car. He was driving away with validation, with a sense of pride that no one could take away. As he slid into the driver's seat, Claire watched him, her own emotions bubbling up, regret, admiration, and something else, something more. Michael had come full circle, and in doing so had shown her and the others what true wealth really meant. Not in dollars, but in perseverance, humility, and integrity. Michael drove off, leaving the dealership behind, but the lesson he left would stay with them forever. The showroom, once a place of judgment, now stood as a reminder. True success wasn't about appearances, it was about what a person was willing to overcome, to achieve, and to be. And Michael had done it all. As Michael's car roared to life and he drove off into the distance, the staff of the dealership stood in silence, watching him go. The glint of the sun off his shiny new car was a reminder that the man they had once dismissed had just driven away with something far more significant than a luxury vehicle. He had earned respect, not just from them, but from himself. Inside the showroom, the atmosphere was heavy with reflection. Claire, in particular, couldn't shake the lessons she had learned over the past few weeks. The truth had hit her hard. She had judged Michael based on his outward appearance, dismissing him without truly seeing him. But now, with the wisdom of experience, she saw how wrong she had been. The world, Claire realized, wasn't always what it seemed. People couldn't be reduced to the clothes they wore or the way they looked. She thought of the way she had treated Michael, the quiet, hardworking man with big dreams, and how that treatment had been based solely on assumptions. Now, as she thought about him driving away in that car, Claire understood that the most unexpected people could change the course of your life. Michael's perseverance, Johnny Depp's quiet kindness, and the lessons they had both taught her came full circle. The story that began with judgment and rejection had ended with redemption and growth. Claire knew she would never look at people the same way again. True wealth, she now understood, was not found in money or status. It was found in kindness, in understanding, and most importantly, in respect for others, no matter where they came from or how they appeared on the outside. As Michael disappeared from view, the dealership staff remained, each quietly contemplating how one man's journey could change everything. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey of perseverance, redemption, and the power of never judging a book by its cover. Michael's story is a powerful reminder that true success comes not from wealth or appearances, but from heart, character, and the courage to overcome rejection. It also shows us how kindness and understanding can change the course of someone's life, even when we least expect it. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with others who might need a little reminder about the power of perseverance and respect. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to our channel for more emotional, real-life stories that will touch your heart and remind you of the good in the world. Your support means the world to us, and we can't wait to share more stories with you.